Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Kazerman, Vice President of Government Relations at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to IssuesWatch. So let's get started. I'm joined today by Bridget D'Souza, Assistant Professor and CPA Advisor at the Frank Guarini School of Business at St. Peter's University. Welcome, Bridget.
Thank you so much.
And we've also got Dan Geltrude, Managing Partner at Geltrude & Company, and a member of the New Jersey State Board of Accountancy. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you.
Today, we're going to talk about the CPA pipeline, and specifically a topic that's being discussed across the country, how to help students earn the college credits required for CPA licensure. We're going to spend the majority of our time talking about the Work for Credit program, pilot program that was started by PwC and St. Peter's University in the fall. But we're also going to touch on legislation that's been proposed in Minnesota, as well as a plan put forth by the AICPA and the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, also known as NASBA. But first, let's quickly go off subject and talk about a recent rule change regarding the CPA exam. Last week, NASBA approved an extension of time to complete all 4 sections of the CPA window. Instead of an 18-month window, they've extended it to 30 months. However, you need to know that each state board of accountancy needs to adopt the new rule in order for it to be effective in the state. So, Dan, let's turn to you. You're on the board. What if anything, is the Board of Accountancy going to do in reaction to this new rule change, CPA change?
Well, I can't speak for our board. I'm just one vote. However, I think the general consensus here is that this is a positive. I don't think that there is anything magical to why you need to pass all 4 parts within the 18-month period. So I think adding basically another year to 30 months is a good thing. You know, I think there's some data out there where we have people that are passing parts, they start to lose parts, and then they give up. Yeah. So I think the 30-month window is probably going to be just about right.
Right. I know I haven't heard any negative responses anywhere, so that's a good thing. So let's talk about the Work for Credit program. Back to the main topic. Dan, can you give us a brief overview of this program, where the idea came from, how it developed, and I think you played a personal role in that, right?
Yes, I did. So, I never really understood this rule, the way it was constructed, to be honest with you. I understood...
You mean the 150 hours?
150, credits. Yeah, the extra 30 credits. And I want to focus in on specifically this. It's not like additional education is not helpful. But the way we constructed this rule in terms of not being specific in where those 30 additional credits need to be, I think that's what really caused people to scratch their head and say, well, this isn't exactly the way it should be. So it added a lot of financial burden to potential candidates and our students. And I started to think about, is there another way to do this? And certainly one way to do that would simply go back to the old rule, 120 credits, and you're done educationally, and you go from there. But the problem with that concept is mobility between the states, right? And substantial equivalency. So that was kind of a dead end at the time. And I'm going back to October of 2021. So I started to think about, what if there was a way to be able to get to 150 credit hours, but have those 30 credit hours be work instead of in the classroom, so that you could have a student still participating in the learning process in our field, be able to get paid and get some real hands-on experience that would be enormously valuable to them. So that was the concept that I had, but we needed participants to prove this out, to have a proof of concept. And that's where St. Peter's University and PwC stepped up and said, you know what? Maybe we can figure something out here. And that's how the pilot for worker credit was born.
Okay, and you can clarify if I've got this wrong, but absolutely no changes were needed to New Jersey's accountancy laws or regulations, right? I mean, this did not get some no formal role was played by the Board of Accounts.
That's correct. Now, I can't speak to what happens with other states, right, but as far as New Jersey's statutes, regulations, work for credit, there was nothing for the board to do in terms of changes.
Right, which made it really easy.
Yes, it did.
Bridget, let's ask you a few questions about the program. How is it administered? You're with St. Peter's. How is it administered, and what are the requirements?
So first of all, let's think about this as the two private partners, PwC and St. Peter's University. So on the university side, what we're concerned with is making sure that students get a full learning experience in this first year of employment with the firm. So these are 6 pilot participants who are full-time employees with PwC. And we jumped at this opportunity because we were confident that we could construct a pilot program with the concept as Dan noted, that would allow a recent graduate to undergo or enter the workforce, have a full 1 year sort of first year experience as an associate in the practice, and meet learning objectives, which is really the university's role, is to sort of help lay out the learning objectives that we would be able to assign credit to. And that's what our sort of role is both mapping out the learning objectives and also working with PwC to make sure those objectives are met.
And how long does the program run for? How many months? How many hours a week do they work?
So they're PwC employees. So they're working full time for PwC. They're doing busy season when it's busy season for them, depending on their clients. And it runs from September through May. So it kind of generally maps to an academic year. And again, it's concurrent with that first year of employment.
And that gets them to 30 credits?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Good. So what kind of work are the associates doing? Audit, tax, they have to touch on a bunch of different areas?
Yeah, so they're being hired as an associate in the practice. And so, if you go to PwC's site, you can see they're getting touch points with tax and accounting and data analytics. And ultimately, I think what's really important is that they're first year associates. And so I think what's really important is, as a university, I do feel St. Peter's stepped up here. We're assigning the credit value to how valuable that experience is to be in the workforce full time.
Right.
They're getting technical subject matter experience with various domains within their practice, but then they're also getting that really enriching teaming, collaboration, communication skills. I mean, they're first year associates, and I think experienced CPAs know what that first year is like.
Yeah.
There's so much learning that happens. And what we wanted to do was help assign value to that in this effort to lower this barrier.
Right. There's nothing like real world experience. Get out of the classroom and see what it is you're going to have to face for the rest of your life.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think you've touched on this, or parts of it. What role, when you're looking at PwC and St. Peter's, by and large, what is the role that St. Peter's plays, and then what the role PwC plays, because you're doing this in tandem?
Sure. So PwC is the employer, and I think that's just really important to know. So these are 6 associates with PwC. They're going through all the training, the orientation, the learning, growth that happens with that first year. The university, on the university side, we're assigning credit. So we have to, lay out our learning objectives. We have to have a process for making sure those objectives are being met. And so it's a collaboration between St. Peter's and PwC to make sure that the students are meeting the learning objectives. So it's a collaboration that requires sort of the academic and the employer to sort of bridge those two, that space that the associate is in.
What kind of response are you getting from the 6 associates who, I assume, are almost done with the program, right?
Yeah.
Later later this month?
I would say it's been a successful pilot year. I think that the feedback has been positive. It's been growth year for them. They've gotten experience that all 6 of them, they would have not been in this position of being able to work because they needed those 30 credits. So they're a year ahead of where they might have been absent this program.
Lucky 6,
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Yeah. So I think I've heard this, but I'm not positive. The program is going to run again in next school year?
Yes. So we have a 2-year, basically 2-year pilot launch with PwC.
Okay, great. So Dan, now here's a regulatory accountancy law question. And I know it took me a while to get the answer to this. I think there was a little confusion at first. Does this work experience, this paid work experience, count towards the experience requirement that you need to get licensed?
Yes, it does. So that was the only issue in which the Board of Accountancy actually took a vote on something. So what we decided to do was the work experience that these associates are getting in the Work for Credit program, well, they're going to get credit and it's going to count towards their 1 year of experience in order to get licensed after they pass the CPA exam. So there was some question there to say, well, wait a minute, isn't that a double dip? Well, you can look at it that way, but our feeling is that the experience that they're getting should count as experience. And they just happen to be getting credit for it.
Yeah, no, I recall looking into that and hearing about it. And the way I read the statute or it was the regulation, there was nothing barring it to happen. It was just a question of interpretation.
Right, and that's why we took the vote to specifically clarify so that there would be nothing in the future to question our intentions.
Right. Now, is this program, Dan, is this scalable? Can small, mid-firm size firms do it to the, a private company, AT&T or some, can this program, maybe you would have a better idea actually since you're running the program, can it be done like that?
Well, let me start off by saying this. When I had approached the people at St. Peter's, I said, look, if you're going to team up with PwC, that's great. They have enormous resources to run this pilot. But the end game really needs to be, this has to apply to every type of employer, and you should design it accordingly, meaning a large, mid-sized, small public accounting firms, not-for-profits, private corporation, government. You have to figure out how to be able to make it work. Because if you think about in the classroom, you're having all those different types of educational exposure in those areas. So why shouldn't the work be the same? But I'll turn it over to you to see how that's going.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, again, this is about validating the fact that work experience can earn credit, right? And I think it's what we've had to do is, again, lay out the learning objectives to make sure that when we assign credit for the experience, that the credit that we're assigning as a university really does map to the learning objectives that the associates have attained. And I think that this there's no reason why this couldn't be done with other universities and employers. I think the key is to have the students at the center, right? The graduates, I should say, at the center, and understand, what's the learning path for that first year.
Right. And I'm sure it'll eventually happen.
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, it's a pilot year. It's a first year of a 2-year pilot. So we're learning. And so I think that, just having this IssuesWatch is really helpful, because I think we're hopefully proving that this can be done and broadening awareness of the concept.
Right. Yeah, there was a lot of confusion in this whole issue when you first brought it up a year and a half ago, and then all the way along the launch of the pilot program. So,
well, Jeff, let me say this. Everyone should understand that we are not changing the 150 credit hour. We are just offering another path to get there.
That was the hardest part to get
understood that, wait, nothing's being replaced or removed.
Right.
It's just another path.
Right. That's the beauty of it. Okay, so we do have some questions from our audience. And I think you probably answered this one, but can any employer participate in the brokers? And I think you've just stated the answer, which is, yeah, once they work it out with the university, there's complete freedom, not up to the Board of Accountancy or anything. How do the participants become eligible for this? There are screening or application process for the participants, students. And again, this could, assuming that the program broadens, this would depend on each school. But how is it being done at St. Peter's? How'd you come up with these 6 people?
I think the best way to kind of explain it is that this is PwC hiring St. Peter's University graduates who they felt were qualified to participate in, to basically join the PwC team. Like I said, these are full-time PwC associates, and it's that first year where we've created this learning pathway that has the credit assigned. So it's very similar to, I would just say, I guess it's similar to a full-time hire process.
So they hire the people, and then you're not involved in screening. It's not like applying to a college. You're hired by them, and then they're working with the school, right?
I would say that, at the university, we're constantly in touch with various employers. We're encouraging students to be aware of different programs. This was similar. It was making them aware of this opportunity. And PwC ultimately, it's the employer who makes the decision.
Right. I guess that makes sense. Yeah. So let's get on to the really controversial thing that popped up a few months ago. The work for credit was on page 1 of the accounting news until this happened. And I don't know if all of our viewers have heard about it, but here you go. So Minnesota, the Minnesota CPA Society drafted legislation which was introduced at their recommendation that will create 3 pathways to CPA license. The key item in this bill to bear in mind is that it allows for licensure with only 120 credit hours, something practically no other state allows, maybe 1 or 2. So this would be the first state, or one of the first only states that allows that. And yet, bear in mind that before 2000, the year 2000, almost every state only required 120 credits. So the first option is the current path, which is the 150 hours and 1 year experience. This is what New Jersey has, and this is what most states require. The second option is 120 credit hours and 2 years experience. And the third pathway would be 120 hours and 1 year of work experience. And at the same time as that experience, there's a requirement to take 120 hours of CPE in that same year. So this has not been without controversy. The AICPA has voiced their opposition to this legislation. You can say the same about NASBA, National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. The AICPA has said, quote, "This will make the Minnesota CPA license an outlier and threaten the ability of Minnesota licensed CPAs and CPA firms to practice across state lines, and that's physically and virtually, without there being added fees, regulatory oversight, and compliance costs," unquote. I should add, and this is key, that the concern goes way beyond what Minnesota's accountancy law will wind up looking like. The AICPA, as well as other groups and individuals, are concerned that other states will follow suit and drop the 150-hour requirement, which could wreak havoc on CPA interstate uniformity and ease of cross-border practice. This uniformity of state CPA laws, which few, if any other professions have, is something the AICPA, NASBA, and state CPA societies spent about 20 years building, state by state. So, Dan, do you have any insight into how this proposal has been, the reaction, both in Minnesota, where it's really hot, and across the country?
Well, it is a hot topic, Jeff, that's for sure. And I think what we have to look at with this is that it's change, and people don't like change. Now, how is this change going to impact the profession? Well, certainly it's going to add another pathway to become a CPA. So you can say that some barriers are going to be removed by potentially what Minnesota says. The big issue here is what happens related to practicing across state lines, the mobility issue. Well, we don't really know how that's going to work out, because if Minnesota does pass this, just my personal view, and I think this is the view of many, that other states are going to follow. So now you go back to the way it was 20 years ago, where different states had different rules related to how to practice in that state. Right. Now, the other thing everybody should keep in mind, licensure is determined by the individual states. So the AICPA can voice their opposition, as well as NASBA, and they certainly have. They actually have no say in the matter, because every state gets to decide what they think is best.
Right. Although I would say NASBA can have influence since all the board members are members, well, many board members from individual states are members of NASBA. So, but yes, neither one of them has any official power to do anything. Bridget, what are your thoughts about this new Minnesota legislation?
Look, I understand where it's coming from in terms of just this need to deal with this barrier. I mean, I'm in New Jersey. Most of my students, they're going to graduate and they work in the tri-state area. But I have seen students leave the pathway, like they've voiced that to me in advising capacity, and then come back because of this pilot program and the idea that they can actually stay on the pathway because this hurdle in New Jersey has been lowered. So I think any and all efforts to contend with this barrier that keeps the students at the center, especially those students who might not be able to afford graduate school or those additional credits, I think is important. And I look forward to how it evolves.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. So let's check if we have any questions. Well, we've been getting a lot of questions about the St. Peter's PWC program that are answered in a set of FAQs that are included in the handouts in the resources panel. I've seen that FAQ. It is very good. So take a look at that with your questions. So on to the next piece of this controversy. The AICPA and NASBA have developed a plan to help students fulfill 150-hour requirements. So this is the third program or proposal. And they are calling it the Experience, Learn, and Earn program, or ELE for short. And this was just released in draft form just a few months ago. So what this program does is it would provide university students who are on a CPA career pathway an opportunity to work at a firm and gain a mix of work experience, study time, and affordable college credit hours. Students will be eligible for this program after completing a bachelor's degree and core accounting courses and before they have their 150 credit hours. So it's important to note, this is important, that the program is not an internship or an apprenticeship. Participants will not receive college credit for the paid work they do. So it's different than the PWC program. The participants who have to have their bachelor's degree will be first-year staff with a reduced workload, and they will be given time to complete the additional credit hours they need to reach the 150-hour requirement. CPA firms of any size and practice type could choose to recruit entry-level hires into the program. The program's college credit, which is interesting, will be earned through online learning, which will be priced at or below the average cost of a community college credit. It will be customizable to the number of credits that a student needs, since many students graduate with more than 120 credit hours. The courses will be based on skills and competencies needed by first-year staff. It's set to launch as a pilot program in the fall of 2023, and there will be up to 1,000 participants and a single university partner that this is being done like this so it can be, wound up and started soon. So, Dan, what are your thoughts about this?
I think it's great. I think what's happening here, and let's go back to giving New Jersey credit, we really started the discussion related to there should be multiple paths to be able to get to licensure. So the fact that the AICPA is putting its resources now into this program to figure out how can we help reduce the barriers to entry, to get costs down, to get our students educated and prepared and interested in a career in accounting, I support it.
Right. And I guess it could be an option right here in New Jersey. There wouldn't need to be any board approval, right?
I don't believe so.
So, Bridget, how about you? What's the educator community been? What's their response been? What do you think?
I look forward to learning more about it from what I've read, what's been published so far. I agree with Dan. I mean, it's another pathway, and it's another option for students to consider. And I think that's important, that we're talking about a hurdle. We're talking about ways for students to sort of overcome this hurdle. And we're talking about really concrete issues like cost and access to the credit.
Right. So there's a lot happening in this field. So let's see if we've got any questions. Yes, we do. Are students creating some portfolio of their work that St. Peter's faculty then reviews to give credit for? Or is it the employer that is signing off on the work and meeting objectives?
So I'll just share that, again, they're PwC employees. I can't speak too much to the process of the arrangement between the university and the employer. But as a university, we are part of this arrangement has been making sure that we have defined learning objectives like we would with any course. And part of our process has been to make sure that those learning objectives are met.
Okay. So here's another one. Do all 30 hours need to be taken in the program? That's a good question. Or can it be just a partial of the 30? So 10 credits, let's say, in school, and 20 credits with the first year associate program.
So I think one way to think about this is the first year maps to 30 credits. So they're really getting that first year of full-time work experience as an associate. So if they need 30 credits, if they need 20 credits, they're going to get up to the 150 no matter what. And they're going to get, so they might go over 150, and that's okay. I mean, they're going to meet that hurdle that they need for licensure. And it's really, the driving sort of paradigm is that it's that first year of experience. So it's not like they're going to work less if they need fewer credits.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Right. So in other words, let's assume they took 10 credits in class. So all they need now is 20. They'd still have to work the full both semesters.
Right. They're working full time for the firm. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Are you seeing increased interest from students for next year? Either from St. Peter's or from other schools. This is for you, Bridget?
Yes. Yep. There's a pathway forward for students who otherwise did not see a pathway forward. It's it's just such a concrete, and I just feel grateful that we have the program. I'm seeing students' faces in my mind right now who are on the pathway, and I can see them entering the profession where before that pathway didn't exist.
Right. Now, I thought right from the beginning that it was a great idea, even before PwC had adopted it. And that, the fact that there didn't need to be any legal changes to the law was golden, Otherwise, it would have taken another 5 years to get this done. So, here we go. I read in the handout question that there is an interviewing process. But is GPA a factor?
So again, this is like a full-time hire process. So for some firms, it might be that is a factor. Depending on, so it really depends.
Right,
it depends on the employer and the employee and the university sort of, and really the employer. I mean, the employer is the one hiring the graduate. So they're making the determination as to the hiring process. The university, again, is helping map out the learning objectives and ensuring that we can assign credit to the outcomes that
Right. So PwC picks 6 people that they're going to hire, and then they say, enroll them in, work with you guys to get them credit. Okay. There we go. Another question. So is every student that participates in this program, your joint program, do they have their bachelor's degree?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. No more questions. If they got tired. So Dan, what are your, do you have any final thoughts on this whole mega issue about 150 hour and where it's headed?
Yeah, I think, Jeff, that there's going to be even more changes. I think because everyone is so focused in on this issue, which is a great thing, there's going to be more ideas and more ways to do this. In the end, what are we trying to do? We're trying to get our young people interested in the field of accounting. Then we want to make sure that they stay engaged and the learning process is meaningful. And obviously, we need more accountants. There's a shortage. So if however we can achieve those objectives without lowering any standards, I think is a great thing.
Right. Bridget, same question?
I agree.
So we have a question. Do you think this program will impact the students' ability to get licensed in another state if they decide to move offices or location?
I can't speak for how another state would license. However, if they've met all the objectives, meaning that they have 150 credit hours and they have the required experience, I think that they would have mobility through this program.
Right. If I'm recalling this correctly, all that really matters according to substantial equivalency is, do you have 150 credits awarded by a qualified college? And if you do, that's that. They don't look at
passing the exam and you have the work experience and you've been licensed in New Jersey, because all the states are substantially equivalent. If New Jersey has issued that license, in this case, in the pilot program, which we will, then they can practice anywhere. Right.
That is really not a problem.
Nope.
Here's another one. Any concern that those working for the firm with this program will be less prepared for the CPA, CPA exam, not having classes over a full semester, and especially with the CPA evolution and changing CPA exam? And that will bring us to the end. I'm sorry, I'm just too quick. Any thoughts on that?
I would argue a full year of work experience will make them more prepared for the CPA exam. And that's because they're getting access to the latest technologies that are used in the marketplace. Remember, CPA evolution is trying to map to the marketplace, right? All this research was done to make the exam more relevant to what's happening in the industry, in the market. And I would argue that what we're doing is we're taking recent graduates and we're getting them into the marketplace sooner.
Right. And I mean, a lot of accounting graduates don't jump right into taking the exam anyway. That takes years off.
Yeah, and it's not to say that they're not going to be as prepared if they go through graduate school or extra credits, but I don't think that working full-time is going to take away from their ability to be prepared for the exam.
Right. Still got to study either way.
Yeah, they're going to have to study either way, right.
All right. Thank you, Dan, Bridget. This has been fun, and I've learned a lot. Oh, wait a minute. We've got another question. I'm so sorry. Is the employment contract between the student and PwC just limited to this program and then it ends after the year?
I'm not sure if I can comment on that, so I'll just encourage everyone just to realize that this is something that universities and employers can work out. Yeah, and it's just this dialogue I think is really important.
Okay. Now that brings us to the end of our broadcast. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you, Dan. Great to have you.